Let's get ready to battle. Feel the intensity when power and technique collide. Crush the competition. Let's begin. 2001 is the year we make contact. Welcome to the revolution.
まあね、もともとロック本キャラだし、
The final mechanic of the series is Just Defend, the unique mechanic for K-Groove. Just Defend originally comes from SNK's Garo Mark of the Wolves, and shares many of the same aspects with Garo, with some minor differences, which we will get into later. Just Defending is essentially the opposite of parry. Instead of pressing forward or down before an attack is about to hit, you press back or down back, thus the term Just Defend. The receiving window for when a Just Defend lands is different than for a parry. The window for a Just Defend is 7 frames either in the air or on the ground, while parry's window changes depending on whether you tap or hold a direction. Just Defend is always 7 frames no matter if you hold or tap that direction. However, if during this time you move the stick in an unrelated direction, the capture window will immediately end at that point. Once the receiving window ends, you will not be able to attempt another Just Defend for another 8 frames. A few things happen after a successful Just Defend. The first is, just like parries, you will negate any possible chip damage and will have no pushback. You will also increase your rage meter. This is important because the only other way for K-Groove to gain meter is by taking damage. The amount of meter you gain is the same regardless of the type or strength of the attack that you just defended. Something unique for Just Defends is that a successful JD will restore a small amount of health. This comes directly from Garo. Where Just Defend greatly differs from parry is the recovery of your character after a Just Defend. In the air, parries allow you to parry through an opponent and then land to be able to punish. JDs in the air tend to launch the character upward. In some instances, you are still able to fall and punish the opponent, but there are cases when the opponent can recover in time to try another anti-air attempt. On the ground, a parry will allow you to immediately act after a successful parry. A Just Defend, by comparison, reduces the defending character's block stun by 2 and increases the recovery of the attack. Now, the actual amount of recovery for each attack is not stated, and the CVS2 Bible even states that there is not a set formula for how much recovery is added onto a JD. This is vastly different from how I previously believed JDs work by going off Buck2's old game fac, which in that, it is stated that JDs would essentially normalize the amount of block stun depending on the strength of the normal or if it was a special. Now, I won't get into why this method almost works, but what I did find is while the amount of added recovery for specials does seem to be arbitrary, the amount of added recovery for normals seems to be consistent, with 4 more frames being added to the recovery. Add this to the 2 less recovery frames of the defender, and essentially any normal that is JD'd recovers 6 frames slower. So something that is -1 is now -7, and so on. Just adding recovery in this way means that you cannot punish everything that you JD. For instance, normals that are already extremely plus, like Cammy's Close Fierce, she actually still remains +4 on a JD, and with no pushback means you actually have no option to retaliate even if you do JD it. Where JDs become very useful is when you JD attacks that are maybe negative, but due to the large pushback are still safe. When you JD these attacks, you increase their recovery and also negate that pushback, allowing you to punish. Mostly you see this when you punish things like sweeps and special attacks, which tend to be negative in a lot of cases to begin with. So I will leave it up to you to find what moves you can actually punish when you Just Defend. Another important aspect of JDs is when JDing attacks with quick multiple hits. For parries, there's a certain number of frames of frame stop, where the game pauses after a successful parry. The frame stop on a successful JD is very small, only 3 frames. This means that some attacks, the timing of multiple JDs can be extremely fast compared to parries, which in turn will require a lot of practice if you want to JD a full super, for instance. Dealing with Just Defends almost falls in line with dealing with parries, where you need to be mindful of your options during your opponent's wake up and anti-airs and so on. While JDs do increase the recovery of an attack, most light attacks will still be plus after JD, Also, chain cancelable light normals can still be chain cancelled after JD, so you can continue to add pressure by continuing to cancel the normal. Trying to punish someone in K-Groove has a similar risk as P-Groove, because just like parry, you can just defend one frame before you can block on recovery. This risk isn't as high against Just Defend as it is against parry, but this is still something to keep in mind when a K-Groover goes for attacks that are semi-safe on block. On Wake Up, many will always attempt to go for a JD, because if they time it wrong, the worst that happens is that they block. Going for a Wake Up JD doesn't immediately open you up to throws like parries, but opponents who are looking to JD will tend to be susceptible to throws. Against jumps, as stated before, a JD will launch the opponent upward. Instead of committing to an attack that would lead you open after a JD, you can attack first with a normal or a special that will allow you to recover before they can, and then change the timing of the follow-up attack. Obviously, this isn't 100% foolproof. When jumping at opponents, this can sometimes mean going for empty jumps, because as stated before, you can't do another JD immediately after an initial JD attempt. Against parries, it was advantageous to try and have the opponent start blocking, because they had lower guard meter than normal, and this was done by changing your attacks from high and low. While K-Groove is similar in that it, in this case, only has 90% regular guard meter, going for a JD is very low risk, because a JD to down back will cover any mid or low option, and even if they miss the timing, it only really leads to block. So you can't really get a K-Groover to try and block instead of JDing like you can with P-Groove. Against things like custom combos, if one would parry the first attack, they could immediately try and retaliate. With JD, it's not a sure thing, as it doesn't have the ability to cancel out of a JD like you could in Garo. However, it is still a good idea if you are the K-Groover to attempt to do an invincible special or super immediately after that JD during an activation, because the initial Just Defend can throw off the timing for the opponent. But this is not guaranteed, and you can only JD so many times as they can still cancel attacks in custom combo. And just like P-Groove, once K-Groove is put into block stun, they have no option to get out. Just Defend is a low-risk mechanic that can lead to high reward in certain situations. And due to the fact that Just Defend allows you to get access to raid meter quicker, allowing you access to higher damage and multiple level 3s in one round, Just Defend is probably one of the strongest of the simple mechanics in CVS 2. I hope this has given you some more insight into Just Defends in CVS 2, and as this is the last mechanic of this series, I look forward to seeing you all in the next series for CVS 2. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and thank you all so much for watching.
Nice setup for that.
Yeah, Gao moving now. You can see his defense activated as well.
Whoa, 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 oh my god!
I'm sorry.
Oh my god.
I know that you'll be back.